Alrighty, it is 10, so let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I hope everyone has been staying cool these past few days. My name is Lorraine Ryu. I am a field auditor for the Department Sales Tax Division. Today, I'm going to be going over some helpful information regarding sales and use taxes, for selling goods at different events such as antique shows, craft shows, fairs, farmers markets, and flea markets. In order to limit distractions, we have turned off everyone's cameras and microphones. However, I encourage you to ask questions as I go over the information in the Q&A section off to the side. I do just have to give a quick disclaimer that the information in this presentation is intended to provide general information and will not go in depth about the department's policies and practices. The information is also not intended to supersede or alter our statutes and regulations. To get started, if you intend on selling goods at the events listed here, you must obtain a sales and use tax permit before making any sales. Even if you only intend on making sales for just one day, the permit must be on display at your booth or table and be visible to the coordinators and customers. Once you register through MyConnect, you can print the permit immediately, and you don't have to wait until it comes in the mail before you can start making sales. Coordinators of these events are responsible for making sure that all vendors in attendance not only have a valid sales and use tax permit, meaning it hasn't expired, but also that it is on display at their table or booth throughout the entire event. In general, the 6.35% sales tax rate applies to the sale of most goods. This applies to any transaction where the title or possession of the goods being sold is transferred from the seller to the buyer in Connecticut. So even if someone doesn't live in our state, if they enter Connecticut and they make a purchase here, that purchase is subject to our sales tax rate. We do not have any sales tax reciprocity with any states at this current time. And just to note, Connecticut does not have any local taxes. Here are some examples of items that would be subject to the 6.35% tax rate. Obviously, this is not a comprehensive list, so if there is something that you are selling that you are unsure would be taxable, you can always contact us and we can provide clarification for you. So items such as artwork, handmade crafts, lotion, pottery, and soap, these would all be subject to sales tax at 6.35. A few items of note are candy, plants, and seeds that are specifically not intended to produce food for human consumption are also taxable at the 6.35% rate. These are pretty common mistakes that we find in audits where the taxpayer is not charging tax for these items. One thing to mention is if you are preparing gift baskets that contain both food and non-food items, if 50% or more of the selling price of the basket is related to non-taxable food items, the entire sale is not subject to sales or use taxes. However, if the majority of the basket is taxable, then the entire sale would be fully taxable. Jewelry over $5,000 and clothes and accessories noted here, such as handbags and wallets that are over $1,000, are subject to what we call the luxury tax rate at 7.75. I know that some handmade items take a lot of time and materials to make, so it's important to know that these items might be subject to a higher tax rate. And these sales would be reported in column 3 on the sales tax return under luxury 7.75% tax rate. If you are selling meals, they are subject to the 7.35% tax rate, regardless of the cost. Meals don't just have to be a full dinner, they can even just be a single item. And food that is prepackaged or prepared that is sold with the intention of being consumed at or near the seller would be considered a meal. And some examples of meals that may be sold at these events are ready to consume coffee or tea, drinks that are 16 ounces or less, single pieces of fruit, pies or cakes by the slice. If they're full cakes or pies, they're considered non-taxable food items. And then the rule of thumb for items such as donuts and pastries is that if you sell 5 or less, they are considered a meal. But if you sell 6 or more, they are considered non-taxable food items. And lastly, any snack foods that are sold in individual pre-packaged bags of 5 ounces or less are considered a meal and are taxable at the 7.35% rate. I included a policy statement off to the side for meals if you would like a more detailed list and description of what is considered a meal, and that is policy statement 2002-2. I've mentioned non-taxable food items here and there, or food for human consumption, as it's sometimes referred to as. These include things that you'll commonly find at the supermarket, such as cereal, eggs, and fruits and vegetables. As I stated before, if you're selling something like fruit at a farmer's market and you only sell one apple, that would no longer fall under food for human consumption and would now be considered a meal. If you are unsure of what food products you're selling, that would be considered non-taxable food products or a meal. Again, feel free to reach out to us for clarification. And sales of non-taxable goods should still be reported as gross receipts on your sales tax return, but can be deducted using line 21. So for some events, there may be an admissions fee or the sale of amusement ride tickets. These would not be subject to sales tax. Shops with common registers are spaces where multiple vendors can display and sell their goods, and customers purchase those goods using the registers owned by the shop. So typically, the shop will charge the vendor a fee for renting the space to sell their goods. This rental fee is not subject to sales tax. The shop doesn't own the goods, however, they are responsible for collecting and remitting the sales tax on behalf of the vendors. In this scenario, both the shop and the vendor must be registered for sales tax. The shop will report the gross receipts on line 1 of the sales tax return and pay the sales tax. The vendor will also report the sales on line 1, but then deduct the sales using line A for other adjustments. The vendor should also keep records of the number of sales made at each shop and each shop's Connecticut tax registration number, which would be available on their Connecticut tax or their sales and use tax form. Consignment shops are similar to shops with common registers, as multiple vendors are selling their goods at one shop. However, the consignee or the person selling the goods on behalf of the consignor charges a commission or fee, which is subject to tax as a taxable sales agent service. And both entities are not always required to be registered for sales tax. The consignee or seller must be registered for sales tax. They are responsible for collecting the tax on the original sale of the good and for collecting the tax on the fee charged to the consignor. The consignee will report the original sale of the good on line 1 as gross receipts from sales of goods, and then use line 3, gross receipts from labor and services, for the fee. If the consignor is a retailer, they must report the sale of the good on line 1, but then deduct it using line A for other adjustments. If the consignor is not a retailer, they are not required to register for sales tax. And I know that was a little confusing, so if you would like additional information or examples for shops with common registers or consignment sales, you can review our informational publication 2001-18. If you purchase goods or services and intend to resell them or incorporate them into another product or service you intend to sell, you must issue a resale certificate to the seller, or you will be required to pay the sales tax at the time of purchase. As a seller, you can accept a resale certificate from other retailers. And one thing to note is that neither shops with common registers or consignment shops would fall under sales for resale. As a purchaser, you should only use a resale certificate if you are engaged in the business of selling the type of goods being purchased, you have a valid sales and use tax permit, and at the time of the purchase, you intend to sell what is being purchased in the course of your business. This doesn't include items that don't become a part of what you're selling, such as knitting needles or equipment used to make the item. You also can't use a resale certificate to purchase items for your own use, such as office supplies or furniture. If you originally purchased something with the intention of selling it, but then remove it from your inventory, you must report the purchase price of the item on your sales and use tax return and pay the use tax. As a seller, you should verify that the resale certificate is properly completed and identifies the type of business the purchaser is engaged in, as well as describes the property or service being purchased from the seller. Sellers must act in good faith when accepting a resale certificate. So when performing an audit, we refer to this as reasonable assumption. If someone is in the business of selling jewelry and they are purchasing a desk, you can reasonably assume that they are not intending to resell that desk. You also must keep the resale certificate with your records of sales for at least 3 years. A standard audit goes back 3 years due to statutory limitations. However, if there are significant discrepancies or evidence of fraud, we will go back 6 years. If you are looking to get your business started, you can go to business.ct.gov to find information on how to start a business, including a customized checklist and a virtual assistant that can help answer general questions. I also recommend reviewing our informational publication called Getting Started in Business. That is informational publication 2018-4. 5. That is a great resource to keep on hand if you have any questions regarding what you should be registered for, the taxability of certain goods and services, and even just helping you choose what type of business structure suits the nature of your business best. It even includes references to policy statements or informational publications that will provide additional detail on specific topics that are listed. As stated before, you are required to register for a sales and use tax permit before making any sales, and it must be on display at each event you attend. The permit expires every 2 years, but it is automatically renewed and mailed to you as long as your business has no outstanding liabilities or unfiled returns. If you have determined that you are required to file a sales and use tax return, you can register online through MyConnect. There is a one-time $100 fee for registering. After the 2 years, when we automatically renew your permit, you will not be subject to that fee again. You can use MyConnect to file taxes, make payments, and communicate with the agency at any time. In order to file a sales tax return or Form OS-114, you must file and pay electronically using MyConnect. The due date is the last day of the month following the end of the reporting period. So, for example, if the last day of the reporting period is December 31st, you would be required to file on January 31st. If the last day of the month falls on a weekend or holiday, the due date will be the next business day. We will notify you of your filing status, meaning if you are a monthly, quarterly, or annual filer, and this is based on either how much you expect your annual tax liability to be, or it will be changed based on what your annual tax liability was. And of course, we will notify you of any changes that are made. And lastly, even if you have no sales for the period, you still must file a return and report that you had no sales. That's another problem that we run into, where even if you have no sales, you think that you might not have to file a return, and then that kind of ties up when we go to renew your permit in 2 years because it looks like you haven't filed any returns. We are constantly striving to provide clear and easy to access information to the public. And so as a result, we have created the Taxpayer Education Center and Business Resource Center that are available on the homepage of our website, portal.ct.gov/DRS. These are great resources for individuals and businesses to help file and pay your Connecticut taxes. I highly recommend bookmarking these pages so that you have them easily available to you. You can also check out our tax events calendar in the Taxpayer Education Center, where we list webinars, library events, in-person events, and holidays. And this presentation is being recorded and will be available for your reference in about a week in the Taxpayer Education Center on our website under live webinar recordings. You can also subscribe to our DRS Tax Topics newsletter, which discusses recent events, news, tax matters, upcoming due dates, and other helpful information. You can see some examples of what these look like on this slide. And this newsletter is released on a quarterly basis. You can use this QR code to subscribe to that newsletter, or again, you can visit our website at portal.ct.gov/DRS. In order to get in contact with us for any questions or concerns, you can reach us by phone at 860-297-5962, by email at drs@ct.gov, or through MyConnect by clicking the More tab, going under Correspondence and selecting Send a Message. And one of our examiners will get back to you as quickly as possible. And lastly, you can find us on social media to stay as up to date as possible on any changes or events going on here at DRS. Thank you so much for listening. I'd like to open the floor to questions. You can go ahead and feel free to put them in the Q&A section off to the side. If I purchase equipment for rental, so if you are purchasing equipment for rental, that would be subject to sales tax.
For rental, you buy it on a resale certificate.
What was that? I guess if you're intending to rent the equipment and then charge your customer for the rental, you could issue the seller a resale certificate. That way you're not subject to the double taxation. An individual can register for a permit without a registered business. You would just create a MyConnect account under your individual account, and then you can register for sales tax. And it depends. Again, if you are expecting to have relatively low sales, I believe that we would assign you to be an annual filer. My question for this, if you have a business and also a farm, so is your business your farm, or are those two completely separate entities? I think I would need more information on that. If you want to leave me your email, I can get back to you on that and request additional information, or you can give us a call or email. Here, see, MyConnect indicates my social security can't be used to register for sales and use tax. I would definitely recommend giving us a call, our taxpayer services team, and we can get that sorted for you. There might be something going on with your account that we can fix on our end. For an author selling books at a book festival, yes, you would need to register for sales and use tax, as books are taxable. And so that depends. If you're going through a bookstore, is the bookstore purchasing your books on resale, or are you paying a fee to have your books at the bookstore? That would be my only question on that, because if they're purchasing them on resale, then you wouldn't be charged the tax. But if you're paying to rent a spot to have your books there, that fee would be subject to tax. Yes, so the detailed list of the certifications and licenses, I would definitely recommend getting started in business, our informational publication. Again, that is informational publication 2018-5. That has a complete detailed list of anything that you might need to register for. But I also would recommend going to our website to get some additional information for that as well. And I see that you left your email. I will get back to you on that. So again, I see it when you're registering as an individual. If you haven't lived in Connecticut before, again, I would recommend calling our taxpayer services team, and they can get you set up. They would be able to walk you through the steps to set that up. How do you get a resale certificate? We have the resale certificate for you to fill out on our website under forms. Who needs it? The retail buyer would need the resale certificate. So you, I'm sorry, you as the buyer would fill out the resale certificate and you would give it to the seller. Give it another minute just in case anyone has any additional questions. All right, and just a reminder, this recording will be available on our website in about a week. I thank you for attending this presentation. You will be sent a survey afterwards. We welcome feedback on this presentation, but would also like to know if there are any additional topics that you would like to hear more about. And just talk about sales and use tax filings. I spoke about the sales and use tax filings earlier in the presentation. I would, if you have additional questions, if you're not fully understanding, I would go ahead and give us a call. My colleague has just pulled up this slide. So our phone at 860-297-5962. If you have additional questions, you can go ahead and give them a call, or you can email us at drs@ct.gov. Scroll down. In regards to the book, the author selling books, do you want to leave your email, and we can have a more detailed discussion about this because there's quite a few questions in there. All right, I'm not seeing any more questions come through. So I really appreciate you all coming to the presentation, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.